Welcome back to the Dean Obeidallah Show. Right now, very happy to have back on the show Frank Figliuzzi, FBI Assistant Director, retired, NBC News National Security Analyst. See him all the time on MSNBC. He's got a brand new book coming out in May, Long Haul, Hunting the Highway Serial Killers, which you'll probably do a reading of on the cruise with Glenn Kirshner in June. Isn't the cruise in June?
The cruise is in July, but
July, sorry.
I will be talking about it on the cruise. Yeah, people, shameless promotion. Go ahead and check out. You can pre-order the book Long Haul on Amazon or wherever you get books. You want to get a leg up on it now and pre-order it. It's getting a lot of buzz. True crime. If you're into true crime, if you're into the horrific stories of human trafficking and how we get better at countering that. If you love a good crime scene, I take you inside the FBI's Highway Serial Killings Initiative. And yes, last but not least, Glenn Kirshner and I on a cruise in the Mediterranean in July with, 100 or two of our closest friends.
That's great. So are you going to work on a Donald Trump true crime book encyclopedia? Sort of like a collector's set of 5 or 6 volumes of Trump's crimes.
I just think I'm going to be putting out my own Bible. I've decided.
Frank Figliuzzi Bible, endorsed Bible. I wanted to buy the Trump endorsed Bible to see how it ends, because I don't think it ends like the regular book. I think he's rewritten it. He's the one that is crucified. Yeah. Everything's about him.
Yes. Well, they do. I understand in the Trump Bible they do overturn the verdict, and Christ is not crucified. So
wow. That's pretty good. And then instead it's Trump.
Well, I don't know.
Trump gets crucified because he's the victim. And I want to touch on something that broke a short time ago. So his trial date in New York here in the election fraud / hush money case is April 15th. His lawyers just filed a motion saying that he can't get a fair trial because of, quote, pre-trial publicity. And it's just laughable that Trump's lawyers, and your friend Glenn Kirshner was just on MSNBC a short time ago talking about this very motion. And part of the motion, the Trump team claimed they polled 400 people in New York asking whether Trump is guilty. And they all said he was. And I'm like, well, apparently New Yorkers have been watching the news, but you can't even trust them. It could have been whatever. So what's your reaction to Trump wanting to indefinitely postpone the April 15th trial date because pre-trial publicity?
Bad publicity. Yeah. So look, if you want a case study of who would have had bad pre-trial publicity, I can think of no one greater than a guy by the name of Jeffrey Dahmer, who killed, cut up, and ate 17 individuals. That was bad publicity. Sure. People were talking about that. And yet, Dean, Jeffrey Dahmer got a trial in the same city where he ate people. And, it was a 2-week trial by jury. He did plead guilty, but insane. And what's the message there? Look, if Jeffrey Dahmer can have a trial with bad pretrial publicity, certainly Donald Trump can. So this is utter nonsense and delay. And he's going to use this to say he can't get a fair trial in Manhattan because, New Yorkers have a brain in their head. And you can't get it in D.C. because, Washington, D.C. is ultra liberal, blah, 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 blah. And it's all delay, and I'm getting really, really sick of it.
Do you think he'll suggest for a trial that it happened at a Trump rally and that the jury pool is selected from people at the rally that are supporting Donald Trump dressed in MAGA hats?
Yeah, he gets this is, again, every one of these nonsensical attempts is a teachable moment for everybody. I know the last 6 years, we've all learned more than we ever thought about the law and jury trials and the Russian threat and blah, blah. So look, here's another teachable moment. There's something called voir dire in the court system. It's jury selection. Everybody gets a say in who gets on the jury. You get to decline a juror.
Sure.
And I'm sure he'll be paying for very expensive, or excuse me, his followers will be paying for very expensive jury experts to tell them exactly who you want on this jury. And they'll be declining jury. Jury selection will take a long time. They'll go through a pool, then they'll go through another pool of prospective jurors. But this concept that he doesn't get a say in who gets on the jury is utter nonsense. So yeah, it almost doesn't matter who's on the jury because really the evidence is there or it's not there.
Mm-hmm. How long do you think, based on your experience, I know it's completely ballpark, How long will it take to pick a jury here in
Oh,
this case?
oh, well, first you got to, you got to ask the routine questions of prospective jurors, which is, do you have a pre-established notion of guilt or innocence here? Have you heard of this man? Have you heard of this case? Have you heard of Stormy Daniels? All of that. And of course, for a large segment of the population, the answer will be yes. And then the next question is, well, can you make an objective decision, separate and apart from any publicity you've heard? And this will be challenged. So the short answer to your question is, don't be surprised if it's weeks
Yeah.
to pick a jury.
That's what Danny Zavala said. He said in a typical criminal case with a lot of felonies, it could be a week. So he said, add another whatever you want after that, another week or 2 weeks after that. But they will get a jury at some point, and I have to believe they're going to have a fair jury because, as Frank is pointing out, Trump's lawyers have every right to ask questions, either through the judge or directly. I think that's directly here in New York, right? I was admitted in New York, but I never tried a case in New York. In Jersey, I was admitted the judge would ask the questions. I tried cases there.
Yeah.
I remember
Yeah.
correctly.
That's a
Yeah.
good question. I don't know. And you know what? That could be really important. You know why? There's a real concern with all of his upcoming trials that there'll be attempts at jury and witness intimidation.
Sure.
And people will be concerned, perhaps rightly so. If I serve on this jury, is somebody following me home? Does my name eventually get leaked? Am I protected? All of that. And so I actually hope it's the judge asking them the questions, so it's not Trump's team glaring at them asking questions.
I'm chatting with Frank Figliuzzi. Frank, on that very point, staying on the April 15th election fraud hush money case. So there was a limited gag order imposed on Donald Trump. And then Donald Trump, after that, then begins posting attacks of Judge Marchand, the judge presiding's daughter, by name, and even sharing a link with a picture of her. And, Alvin Bragg's office just asked on Friday for an extension of the gag order to include families of the judge, families of the DA, families of witnesses. And just taking a step back, the idea that you have to protect the families from the defendant and the defendant's allies, even in mob trials, was that a concern?
Yeah. Oh my. Yeah. I've seen it myself in my own FBI career. Family members threatened, even in one case, killed.
Wow.
This is a legit concern. And I don't know what human decency is left in our society anymore, but the idea of attacking a judge's daughter just because she's the judge's daughter, or even let's assume whatever he's got in his head about her political affiliation or whatever, what's the point of that? What is the point of that? And if you turn the tables around, if you're a decent human being, and you say, would I want my kid attacked publicly in this environment, violent threat environment we're in? How do you feel about Ivanka, a Barron? How about Barron being threatened? How do you feel about that, Don? We're in a realm where civility and decency has long been thrown out the window. So I think it's a no-brainer, Dean, that the judge will extend the gag order and to include everybody's family members.
Let me ask you, Frank, as someone's a former FBI assistant director here, given the history of Donald Trump, that his supporters have engaged in threats against those perceived as enemies, including judges and prosecutors, by Donald Trump elevating and amplifying the name of the judge's daughter, what red flags that raise for you? Like, what is Trump's goal from your point of view?
This is the mobster mentality, where it's physical intimidation and threat while maintaining plausible deniability, so that, God forbid, when someone does get hurt, and I'm concerned it's going to happen eventually somewhere. Mostly it's been Trump's followers, quite frankly, who get themselves killed on his behalf. But when something happens, he'll have arm's length deniability and say, well, hey, I was just posting a photo. I didn't mean for her to be killed. The threat is real. People are being arrested all the time for threatening the judges. We've had, in unrelated Trump matters, not related to Trump, we've had judges killed, judges' family threatened in other cases. In this Trump environment, people have been arrested by the FBI for threatening the judge Chutkan in DC, for threatening to kill FBI agents, now with some frequency, so much so that there's a unit at FBI headquarters dedicated exclusively to addressing threats against agents and prosecutors. This is the environment we're in, where every FBI field office is now almost consumed with dealing with violent threats because of domestic terrorism and Trump. Lord only knows what's not getting done in the FBI because of this lunacy that we're in right now. So it's a real threat. Do I believe he's sitting there directing, assassins to kill people? No, he does not need to. As we learned on January 6th, people who are crazy will take this as some kind of motivation to take matters into their own hands.
And on this very point, over the weekend, Donald Trump shared on social media a video that was here in Long Island. I mean, I'm in New York, so I say here in Long Island, in Long Island, where some Trump supporter on the back of their pickup truck on that door had a full-size image of Joe Biden where he is tied up, hogtied essentially. And, someone else did that. Trump didn't paint that, but Trump videotaped it. And then Trump could have shared any video he wanted, but he shared that. And there was a reason why. What is your reaction when you hear about Donald Trump sharing this, given his history of violence?
Yeah, it's maddening, but it shows you the gap in our system that has been exposed ever since Trump began running for president. And by that I mean we're not set up as a system for this. We're set up as a system that people will generally follow the law. We won't have a president or a presidential candidate who will absolutely inspire violence. And so the things we value most in our society, free speech, freedom of assembly, is now making us even more vulnerable to someone who wants to crack our society. And he's cracking the code right now. What do I mean by that? Imagine you're the US Secret Service, and you're typically, prior to Trump, you are knocking on doors if somebody's posting a photo of the president of the United States tied up and kidnapped. Yeah, you're getting a knock on the door. You and me do it, we're getting a knock on the door. The volume of this right now is such that, as I said, entire FBI squads around the country are racing to handle things like this. This, by the way, if anybody's out there listening saying Frank is condemning free speech because that post is just free speech, that's bullshit. That's not free speech. That is violent speech, so to speak. And we don't do that to our presidents, plural. And so the FBI, the Secret Service now is looking at what is free speech? Do we have the resources? How old is this post? Because people need to understand, as you said, that post, that truck, that whole photo and video, it has, by the way, it has Trump flag, it has other crap on it, Trump flags and stickers that some could say, well, and if a prosecutor's looking at it, well, maybe Trump was actually wanted to focus on what was originally on the truck, which is flags. And, all of this is going on across the country. And it stymies our ability to actually do something about it. And the other side of this is if you talk to Secret Service, which I do, they'll tell you, we're walking this fine line between becoming part of the problem and addressing the problem. So in other words, if everybody gets a knock on the door that's doing this, if it's a self-fulfilling prophecy of the accusers that, federal agents are jackbooted thugs, they're suppressing all of us, they're part of the problem. It could create even more threats and people driving around even more with it. So it's a no-win for society. It's a no-win for law enforcement.
And, over the weekend online, of course, they were comparing what Trump did to Kathy Griffin, who years ago was a comedian, though, did an image holding up a head of Trump. Now, she suffered a backlash. She lost her CNN gig for the New Year's Eve. She suffered a backlash, personal threats and all of that. But they're not the same in the sense that Kathy Griffin doesn't have a history of inciting violence and inciting an attack on our Capitol to overthrow an election and numerous they're not like Griffiners, fight for Griffin people, fight for Kathy people out there who have committed acts of violence. So when Trump does this, Do I think tomorrow? I mean, let me ask you, you're the expert. It's not like, do you get a sense that someone sees this at Trump supporter and go, you know what, I'm going to kidnap Joe Biden? Or is it the more concern that you were adding violent imagery to already a toxic, heated political climate?
Yeah. All right. So there's a lot there. A guy driving around wherever he's driving around with that on his truck, along with Trump flags and bumper stickers. Is that guy going to go? Is anybody capable through Secret Service protection, getting through that fortress, that wall of protection, capable of kidnapping and tying up the president of the United States? Highly unlikely. That's not the threat I'm talking about. The threat I'm talking about is that now it went from a guy in his truck to a candidate for president who clearly has a track record of being able to influence thousands of people to do bad things, now normalizing that and potentially inciting people to do violence, specifically roping up the president. No, but it's this, he's feeding and fueling this violent environment and making us all numb. I drive around town, I see this stuff. I see it. I saw it yesterday on Easter goddamn Sunday. And it's ridiculous. But we become numb to it. And now we think, just another crazy. Well, it's the crazies that will kill us.
It's just a remarkable chat with Frank Figliuzzi. Frank, earlier in our interview, there was a sense of frustration in your tone about Donald Trump gaming the system or getting away with things. When you look at the big picture, take a step back. January 6th was 3 years, 3 months ago. And Donald Trump still walks completely free. He is facing charges, but walks free from that. And his attempted coup efforts even predate 3 years and 3 months ago. He goes like a month or two before that. How concerned are you? And if without having swift accountability, are you concerned this is going to embolden more Trumpers as we get closer to election day to potentially commit acts of violence on his behalf?
Yeah, justice delayed, justice denied to all of us. And yes, Trump has cracked the code with his lawyers and is exploiting the rights and privileges that he enjoys as a U.S. citizen for nefarious purposes. So he has every right to trials, appeals, motions. God bless you, knock yourself out. But when you're doing it for the sole purpose of delay, as he's now being called out on, it's going to delay justice for all of us. It's going to be in a position where people who are, there's a handful of people out there, particularly independents, who are saying, I really do want to see all the evidence. I really do. At least maybe they're pretending to say, I want to see a verdict before I vote. It's highly unlikely to happen. And then, he's also programmed his followers to think that this is all nonsense. You see people interviewed at rallies. What do you think of this trial, that trial? All of it's nonsense. All of it's fabricated. It's all deep state. They're all working together. You mean the state, federal, county, all of them working together? Yes. Really? Being controlled by the White House? Absolutely. It never happened. I've talked to evangelical Christians about the fact that he's philandered and cheated and committed adultery, particularly while his wife had just given birth, and they go, "No, not true, not true." So we're at a place, Dean, and you're talking to a 25-year government veteran, where I'm about to tell you that the government isn't the answer to this. The only answer to this is going to be the people. Now I'm echoing what you hear from the far right, right?
Right.
The only answer to this is us voting in such large numbers that, yes, he'll throw a fit. And yes, there'll be some violence when he loses. But he's got to lose because he's an existential threat to democracy.
I agree. Look, I mean, we can't predict the future, but based on Trump's history and past conduct, as we get closer to election day and say the polls stay close, or even worse, he begins sliding, because now there is movement in the polling now. And this polling this far out really means nothing.
It's early.
People start focusing on things. There's no doubt we're going to see, because we've seen now Quinnipiac and Fielders where Biden's leading by 2 and 3 and Trump ignores them. But there's be a point where he can't turn away from that. Does that, in your view, concern you that he'll be even more desperate? Because he's not running just to win. He's running to stay out of jail. We get this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, a desperate Trump is a dangerous Trump. And I'm sure people are sick and tired of hearing me doing the comparison to the cult, but the cult leader who predicts things that are going to happen with his followers, but ultimately gets called out and the thing doesn't happen the way he wants it, can force the end the way he wants it. And he will attempt to do so. And some of his followers will commit violence. And, it won't necessarily be the iconic attack on the US Capitol that we've already seen, but rather soft targets, particularly if there'll be disputes over voting in key precincts and swing states. And that's where the feds need to come alongside local, county, and state police and gear up for what will be a wild ride in November, with Trump making accusations that voting was illegal, unfair, and rigged.
You make such a great point. I think in the fall, we're going to hear so much more about that, where it becomes part of the media narrative. What will Trump try after the election? Is his supporters going to not storm the Capitol, but storm an election voting counting center in Arizona, which they were almost last time in Maricopa County on the edge of doing that? And now that we know what could happen, the role that the federal government has to play in protecting those places, and being in advance. I mean, I just had the governor of Pennsylvania. They started an election threat task force already because they know what's coming. They've started it like a month ago for November, and they're coordinating all the different members of law enforcement, election officials, and everything. And I don't know what it's like to live in another country where maybe that's normal. Political violence is part of the world that you live in. But now this is the country we live in, and this is what we're dealing with.
Shame on any state or county that isn't already preparing for November with their law enforcement partners at all levels. I know that one of the beauties of our system here is that our elections are run by the states. I think there is a beauty in that. I like the fact that there can't be a single point of failure. If we had federally run elections, you could literally have a single point of failure. You hack the federal system and you're done. One powerful president could rig the whole federal system. So there's good news, bad news in counties and states running their own election processes. You get all these gazillion election machines that are different and different ways of doing it and counting. But on the same hand, it leaves those counties and states hanging out there on a limb. And so the compromise is that Homeland Security needs to come in. CISA, the cyber security folks of the federal government, need to come in, and they have successfully done this. By the way, the reason our 2020 election withstood all of this was the feds had come along and made the election system almost bulletproof, and it withstood over 60 court challenges. We got to do that again, even stronger, because I do think we're going to see artificial intelligence and foreign power influence and hacking really wreak havoc with the next election.
When you were an FBI agent, did you ever see these kind of threats in this level against election workers, against the entire system?
No, as even at a local or state level, never. Corruption, of course, a bad egg here or there in a voting precinct, of course. But this is stuff, as you said, this is stuff you see in third world countries. This is ridiculous. And, I mean, it's not a joke, but I think I saw somewhere that, some other countries were talking about coming in and monitoring us as if we're a third world, monitoring our elections as if we're a third world country. The UN could come in and say, we would be doing this for another country if we saw this playing out there.
I think Trump wants Vladimir Putin to monitor our elections for us.
Let me assure you, Putin is monitoring the election.
Unreal. So, Frank, last thing, if people want to pre-order your book, Long Haul: Hunting the Highway Serial Killers, where can they go?
Yeah, if you got Amazon Prime, if you love Barnes and Noble, if you got an independent bookseller, it's all there. It's on HarperCollins' website. They give you a choice of where you want to buy your book from. But I would pre-order it. These days, pre-ordering is the secret to getting the attention of the bestseller list. But I want to say this. A portion of my proceeds from the book, Dean, are going to go to organizations that counter human sex trafficking
Oh, great.
Organizations that help these women who have been killed now, who have no voice, help give them a voice by helping anti-trafficking organizations. If it's and Father's Day is coming up, we're targeting Father's Day. Why? If you've always wondered about what goes on in a big rig on the highway, what trucking is like today, how it works, how you fuel up, by the way, over $1,000 to fuel up, how the way stations work, how you find a place at night to lay your head at a truck stop, all of that's in there. There's three cultures: trucking, trafficking, and crime analysis. All of that's there. You can order it now for pre-order.
Long Haul, Hunting the Highway Serial Killers, Frank Figliuzzi. We have a lot of truckers who listen to SiriusXM in this show, so I'm sure they're going to read the trucking part, and then they'll call in and tell me what they thought of it.
Hey, listen, if there's truckers listening, I rode over 2,000 miles in a big rig as part of my research for this book.
Wow. We do have a lot of truckers SiriusXM. Yeah, that's
they listen to radio, they listen
we love
to
the
audio.
truckers. I sound like Trump. We love the truckers on this channel. On the whole SiriusXM, we love the truckers. Yeah. So thanks, Frank. Nice seeing you, brother. Have a great day.